When you plan your garden, think about who's actually going to do the work. That'll help you determine a couple of things, like how big is it going to be, what are the seeds that you're actually going to be buying. If you're going to be doing it by yourself, then don't get too ambitious. Probably, if it's your very first garden, I wouldn't make it any bigger than 8 by 10 feet. Try a small one first. If you're tearing up your yard anyway and you decide it's not for you, it won't be such a big area to sod back into a yard again. You can always enlarge it the next year if you feel that you want to continue doing it. Think also about what do you actually like to eat. What kinds of seeds or vegetables do you want to grow? I don't think I'd waste my time growing vegetables on something that I didn't even like. So that'll help you decide what you're going to plant. Also think about how much you're going to be planting. When we sold our house in Indiana several years ago, 3 years ago, and moved, we had a fairly large garden. It was 35 by 50. It had been much larger when our kids were all at home, but as they all moved away, I kept sowing more grass, and it was down to 35 by 50, which was still a fairly large garden. We sold it to a young family who had 3 little boys, and they had lived in a subdivision with just a very small yard, and they were so excited about getting this 2.5 acres with a big garden already established. So a year later, I talked to him and asked him, how did your garden do last year? And he said, well, we learned a few things. He said, we had a lot of tomatoes. I said, well, we always did too. I said, they come in packs of 4 often. And so I said, I hated to throw one away. I only needed 3. But I usually went ahead and planted the 4 for my wife and I. And then we just gave tons of tomatoes to everybody. He said, well, we planted 30. He said, we really like tomatoes, and there's 5 of us, even though my boys were just little. But he said, 30 sounded like a good number, and they were cheap. And he said, oh, did we have tomatoes? He said, we gave away all tomatoes until they were just coming out of our ears. And finally, we just left them rot in the garden. So think a little bit about what you like to eat, and ask somebody else what's actually practical. Also, what you like to eat will help to determine when you plant, because there are some vegetables that are cool weather vegetables, some are hot weather vegetables, some take many more days to grow than others and to mature. And if you buy seeds, packages of seeds like we have over here, read the back of the package. You get lots of information on the back of that little package. It'll tell you the best time of year to plant, the best time of the summer to plant it. It'll tell you how far apart to place your seeds, how deep to plant them, how far apart to place your rows. Lots of information there for you. Another thing you want to think about is how much space do you actually have available. If you have a really large backyard, then you may not want to go with a raised bed. You may not want to go with a container garden. You may want to go just put in a plot. That's what I have at my house now. I have a big backyard. Right now my garden is not huge, but it's 15 by 20, I guess it is. 10 by 20. 200 square feet, 10 by 20. So you could do a backyard plot, you could do a raised bed, or a container garden. Now let's talk about all 3 of those. No matter which one of those that you use, you're going to have plenty of sunshine. Really, they should be in full sun all day, but a minimum of 6 hours. If you don't, your plants are going to grow. They'll grow real tall, real spindly. They'll tend to fall over, and you'll get leaves and stems mostly, and very little vegetables. So you really you'll be getting exercise and you'll be breathing fresh air, but you're probably going to be wasting your time if you can't find a sunny spot. My son lives over in the northeast part of Columbia, and every year in his backyard, shaded with tall pine trees, he puts in a little vegetable garden right up next to his house under a pine tree. And every year he gets about 3 tomatoes and plants that are about 3 feet tall and have 4 leaves. And I keep telling him, you need to put that in your front yard, but it looks so terrible. If you don't have sunshine, you're just not going to have a very good garden.